Before we get started, I just wanted to have a quick message from our session sponsor, ShipHawk. If you fulfill orders from a warehouse and you deal with the world behind the buy button and it's complicated, acumatica solves your ERP needs. But how do you solve your warehouse management and fulfillment needs? Well, with the combination of acumatica and ShipHawk, your system will easily connect ERP and shipping into one seamless solution. ShipHawk brings peace of mind from one partner to the world behind the buy button. So thank you, ShipHawk, for the sponsorship today. And I believe they also have an expo booth out there, too, if you ever want to get more information about them. All right. Let's go ahead right into kind of our slide today. So, and thank you for adding in that piece there. So appreciate it. So today we're going to be talking about product configurator and estimating, kind of showing you and describing a little bit how we would utilize both within implementation and also throughout the sales cycle when you would discuss down one path versus the other. I'll try to show some of the highlights of each area and also show the differences between the two and where they really break apart there. So just a quick introduction. My name is Stephen Hennelly. As you can see, I'm a senior acumatica consultant at Blytheco. I've been involved now with Blytheco for over 2 years now, but I've been utilizing, implementing the acumatica product since 2012. It's quite a long time. I was been involved with a company called JOS Systems that developed a manufacturing solution, including early on developing the product configurator and estimating modules. So been involved now, especially with the manufacturing piece for many years, and it's kind of my specialty as far as what I implement. So have a lot of great knowledge within this area here. So looking forward to talking to you today about it. What I wanted to talk to was, of course, the configuring versus estimating. Our first major piece we'll get into is estimating. We'll get into, some of the major pieces about it. We'll go through some examples and how we could leverage that within acumatica. And then we'll get into the configuration piece and kind of show you some examples within there. And again, we can kind of discuss a little bit of our differences, similarities, and at the end, I'll try to save some time for some questioning and answering, okay? So configure versus estimate, right? There's a lot of similarities there. I mean, in the end, it is something you're trying to produce, something you're quoting, gathering a price to provide back to your customer. Now that's a lot of where it kind of falls off. There's some very big differences between the two. When you get into estimating, it's more of an engineering type of environment. Estimating, you'll see you are building an engineering order, an estimate from scratch typically. You're building out all the specifications like the work centers, the operations, different costs that go involved with that, and defining items that you may have already purchased, may have already manufactured, or none of the above. And you'll see that we can utilize within estimating things like non-inventory items, which are different than non-stock and, of course, stock items in that they are not listed in the inventory master. We'll show how we can create those into actual inventory items and expedite that process. But a big kind of component of the estimating module is the fact that I'm most likely engineering something, estimating something that I have not done in the past. On the contrary, the configuration, you are building it to a specification. You have actually rules, features, options, attributes being built out ahead of time in order to come up with the different scenarios that could be done. So then a customer or a salesperson at that point is then customizing to that need, right? They're working within certain stipulations, certain features, certain options. But that information is defined ahead of time and provided to the sales team, to the customer. Unlike an estimate, you may gather requirements, but then in turn have to still engineer and put together what that information may look like, right? So estimating gets a little bit more into revision control, working with an engineering department, sales team. There's more of that opportunity quoting kind of process that's built into that. I see this very common within companies like metal fabricators, project, new project work for construction. I might have to estimate something new, different things of that nature. And then you'll get into things like configuration when you're getting more into already engineered types of products, but have different dimensional or option-based products. Things like, I always think of car manufacturers are a great example of, you're buying one of their models, but you're buying within some flexibility that you can have. However, you're within that flexibility. You're not designing it from scratch like you would maybe using the estimating module. So big difference. One's more of that engineer to order estimating. One's more of that make to order, configure to order, assemble to order type of functionality using the configurator tool, right? Both are intended to be, on that sales side and assist with manufacturing. But again, we'll see a little bit in its setup and processing, how they kind of differ from there, all right? So the first major one I'm going to get into is estimating. So just to kind of give you a little heads up on what I'm doing here, I have kind of this custom metal fabrication shop. So customers come to me, they tell me what they're looking for within, maybe a certain gauge of metal or certain type of process they needed to do, a certain function they needed to do. And I'm going to work with them through an opportunity, quote them their necessary information, give that back to them, hopefully get a sale and produce that into a sales order, right? So a lot of that engineering team will be involved and that sales team will be involved. We'll also go over how we can break down pricing, get into different things, what our costing information that goes into it, and how we could potentially display that back to the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and get into an example here, right? So I'm actually going to open up a local site that I have here. So this is running 22R1 at the moment. And what I want to show is the fact that I can create an estimate, convert that over to a sales order, and everywhere in between. So just a real quick function here where I go ahead and enter in my opportunity. And of course, it's running a local machine, so we're going to get it spun up super fast here. And I'm going to go ahead and estimate to my favorite customer, my bartending school. And let's just say they need some new flange to increase their beer flow at their bar. So I'm going to go ahead, create my initial opportunity, and then what I want to show is the fact that this estimate is incorporated in multiple different areas in the system, including, in this case, opportunities. So I can go ahead and add in my existing estimate, which if I may have already started, I can go ahead and check this box for add estimate existing. Otherwise, flange new, I'm just going to create some new flange for them. So I'm just filling out some detail initially, high level, new, just different detail. Note that it's coming up as non-inventory. This is an item I do not have currently in my list of inventory items, okay? So this is my quick little sales way of creating the need for engineering to come in and estimate this product even further. So as this goes on to the next stage here, I'll be able to go in and see my estimate from here. Of course, this was working about much faster here about 2 minutes ago. And then as I get my new estimate in there, I'll be able to see the breakdown of cost. I can go ahead and create that estimate from different areas in the system, including existing bills of material, existing production orders, existing estimates as well. So now I have my estimate from here. I'm going to go ahead and click into my estimate and go ahead and build out its detail accordingly, right? So as this opens, and I don't know why it's running so slow yet right now. It was literally just flying a million miles a minute a few seconds ago. And so as this estimate opens, we'll go ahead and see how we can go about updating that information. Of course, it's like it knew I was in the middle of processing here and decided to slow down tremendously for me. I apologize about that. And so as we see here, there we go. I could go ahead and so this is all my detail about my estimate. You can see I have no information on it currently. what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy it from an existing estimate, so that way I can kind of quickly and easily create my estimate. I don't have to fill out all the details. But note, as I go through this, I could just as easily do that. So I'm going to pull up an existing one that I had here earlier. I'm also going to put in its revision and copy that detail into here. And then now what you'll see is a whole entire estimate filled out with greater detail, including all sorts of costs that are built out from my work centers, things like my fixed labor time that I have built into it, my machine time that I have on certain operations in order to cut that piece. I also have assembly time built into that too. That leads into my variable labor cost here. So you can see now that as I add in operations, of which I can still update and maintain these, this is where that engineering point comes into play. It's like I'm building a bill of material, but I'm not building a bill of material, right? Not just yet, at least. So I see my initial costs at a high level here. I can see them broken down by operational over here. I can see the fact that I've tied this to an opportunity, as well as it may be tied to other information out there. So I'm keeping control of that information as I go through, not only from the engineering side, but back over to that opportunity in just a minute here. And I'll show you that in just a quick second. I'm actually going to change this up, and I'm just going to quote one of them, and not really 10 of them at this present time. But you'll see when I change my quantity, it does update cost. I have also baked into it different markup percentages, which I can break down by category in order to drive in different pricing. And then also at the end, the biggest thing about this estimating module is the flexibility. It's the ability to overwrite things, whether it's price, whether it's overall cost, right? I can get in there and I can make in my own variable labor cost if I so choose. I can also, within each operation, just like a bill of material, I can add in more detail around what part numbers are being used, how much they're being consumed, different things, just like any other engineering kind of environment would work within that, right? So while that's kind of loading, I'm going to let that load up. I'm going to go back to my opportunity, give it a quick little refresh, and see the fact that now my detail from that estimate has now passed back over to my opportunity, right? And just like you would on any other opportunity, you may print off that detail. You might even create a quote from there. This does integrate very well with the opportunity quotes, just the same. I'm going to keep it a little bit simple and keep it just to an overall opportunity. Can add multiple estimates, so on and so forth, right? Just a quick flip back to the estimate operation. So here's that detail listed to a given part number. You can see I have inventory that is actually in my acumatic as inventory. I note that by the non-inventory not being checked, but I can just as easily add in other items that are not inventory as well, right? So flexibility is the name of the game when it comes to an estimate there, right? Now, as I go through my opportunity, customer, we go back and forth, we figure out what procedure we may want, what goes into the detail there. Again, this detail, because it's now stored in the database, as most people might know, I can present that in many different ways back to the customer. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and presume that the customer is going to buy. So I'll go ahead into my estimate at this point, and what I want to do is I need to create this as an actual inventory item, right? I need to go ahead and make sure that this is a sellable inventory item now that the customer wants to go ahead and buy it. So I'm going to quickly and easily use the Acumatica's functionality to create new inventory items from the estimates there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this loaded up, and you'll see here that I have these new items. I have the ability to update item class, posting classes, everything in between that you would need to create a standard inventory item. So as I go ahead and process that, that's going to go off, create the actual stock item that I will now use moving forward to sell and produce against. So that's now in my inventory, and I no longer need to create that item. Now, when I go back to my opportunity, I go ahead and convert my sales order. Obviously, you might also do some more stuff around the statuses and things like that, but regardless, I want to convert my estimate because now I want it to be an actual sellable, producible item, right? So now as this, we'll go over in just a second, it'll create my sales order with that detail and then also queue it up for production purposes, right? And then just something just slightly I want to show with on the sales order here is the fact that it does tie into that exact estimate that was created. So I still am able to track back to what that original detailed information was. And then as I go on, create my production for it, it will even copy the estimate over to the production. So another big benefit here is the fact that I do not need a bill of material, which the estimate kind of supplements in its own regard. All right, so that would be kind of the next big step. Key is I can create my estimates, be able to manipulate as such. I can copy it from even existing ones, so I can kind of keep that consistency and what I might be quoting, and I'm building up all those costs with potential pricing to provide back to my customer some type of hopeful profit margin that I can gain within this. And then I have all the details stored within my estimate that's stored back to my sales order and opportunity, so I can track it for later purposes if I need to. With the ability to do revision control, you can track as many different revisions as you need to against that particular estimate and quote. All right. So that's kind of how estimating would be leveraged within, kind of the environment there. And then talking more about, so this is just kind of a quick little recap in estimating, where it can be utilized, how it leverages non-inventory items, how I can create it from copying from other orders, and I can even convert it from the quotes to sales orders pretty quick and easily. Now, the big difference we're going to get into is when we get into our configurator side, right? So configurator, I'm going to, I have a baseball bat company that I have here where I'm going to configure the size and color of a baseball bat. Big difference is I'm not engineering it to order. I've already spec'd out all the colors that I would need, all the sizings that I have allowed, all the particular types of wood, and I've built out those different rules that are there. With the pricing engine built into acuMatica, I'm able to now configure that baseball bat on a given order as I go through. So I'm going to get right to that and show you my example of creating a configuration. Now, I do want to show off just a little bit of the maintenance here too, because I do think that that's just as important, right? The maintenance for an estimate, I'm more or less creating it as I go. Where if you have a configuration, again, the big point I like to make here is it's predefined. I already know ahead of time what my options, what my features, what my selections can be, and I'm going to provide that to sales and thus to the customer accordingly. So here I can see my features. I kind of think of them as the questions. I have my options, which are more or less my answers to those questions. I can have as many as I want. I can control how many I select. I can control the sizing, where it goes into my bill of material. So that's another key point. I must have a bill of material ahead of time. But basically, I'm leveraging real inventory at this point too to generate a configurable item in the end. I also leverage attributes, acuMatica's standard function for attributes, of which actually we can set those values to different variables. Those variables we can even in turn reference within our dimensional based quantity required for items. So I'm going to show you that as well when we create a quick configuration here. But this is defined ahead of time and developed, with engineering, sales, and production all included. So now I'm going to go ahead and create just a new quote. I want to create a quote, convert that to a sales order, and kind of move from there. But mostly want to show how can I create these configurations. So we'll go ahead and just get that opened up here just real fast. And then, the other piece with this too, so I'm going to show this from a quote. We can also call the configurator from the sales portal. I know some folks actually still use the acuMatica sales portal, right, which is an extension of acuMatica. Especially even in the sales side of things. One of those pieces is the configuration tool that I'm going to be showing you here just the same. So I'll go ahead and put in my configured item. I'm going to also put in a quantity of how much I'm configuring. And I'll go ahead and save that item initially so I can then create the necessary detail on this configuration. So now I have an additional button that launches for me where I can see, again, kind of my loose questions and answers. So I'm going to answer all my information. And again, this is all passed on from that initial maintenance that I just showed you. So I can choose things like different sizing. Note that I've had rules set up here where if I choose a wrong size, I'm actually going to get a message that tells me that it's invalidating those rules. So I must choose the size within there. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. I have one here that says that it's required, so I must choose that. This one's not required, so I can actually skip that if I like. And I'm choosing potentially other options as well, right? Then I can get into my options where I'm choosing more information about this. And in this case, I'm actually also choosing inventory items, right? I'm just inevitably choosing that in the background. So I'm going to choose my natural handle color. I'm going to choose my blue body. I'm a big Atlanta Braves fan, so that is where I'd like to go there. And then I'd have my lettering that I want to choose within there. Note that I have an option actually that's missing. Well, the reason it's missing is I wrote a rule that says if my body is blue, then obviously the lettering that's built within there can't be blue, right? I wouldn't be able to read it otherwise. So I've gone ahead and hid an actual option there that I can't select. So I'm going to select something else, which is red and blue for the Braves again. And then I'm going to go ahead and choose my size. And then note also my quantity is dictated based off of my attribute link that I already chose. So I don't have to come in here and choose anything extra that if I want to, I can just go ahead and select my given product. And then also note, as I was out selecting through items, I have it also where it's building the price as we go. So as I select certain information, I might get a certain pricing that's applicable. Go ahead and finish that. And then now I have a completed price with all options that are valid and complete for the customer direct to this sales order. So now that I'm going to close out, I get my updated sales price. I have my quote. I could provide that to the customer. Customer would like to move forward with that configuration. I go ahead and just like any other process of creating the sales order, I'm going to also add in the fact that I want to copy my configuration over there as well and create my new sales order with the same exact detail that I did for my configuration on the quote. No change in price and everything in between, right? And then from here, I might also then produce it. I shouldn't say might. I would end up producing it from here and creating it very similarly as I did the estimate, but now with the details of that configuration. And then they would move forward from there. Right. So kind of back to a little bit of the agenda here, right? And then, you know, the configurations that can be generated from relatively similar places as that estimate. I actually probably should have mentioned one more in here too. I can create a configuration direct from a production order. Don't have to create a sales order, an opportunity to do that. I can actually create a production order, configure it, and go. It's also possible to do. Configurator does leverage, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to like highlight, not to click. Configurator leverages acuCONNECT's pricing engine, so it gets into, you know, customer specific pricing, customer price specific pricing to roll up and dictate my configured price value. It uses those predefined features, options, attributes, also along with those conditional based rules to dictate, you know, what items might show, what might not show, what do I want to validate, what is good, accurate configuration. So, you know, really in the end, great tools for quoting pricing, great tools to use within the manufacturing, but they are really driven from two different thoughts. One is building it as I go. I might not know all the detail. I might have to engineer because I may have never done that process before. Again, I think of metal fabricators are a great example, right? It's something that you're doing some custom fabrication. And then configuration is it's already been engineered, determined how things can be built, produced, sold, and it works within those requirements, so that, you know, companies like, you know, I worked with one that did, they built custom backends for utility trucks, right? Building the different compartments, and, you know, based on truck size, you know, if they're using Ford, if they're using GMC, they're going to build different features and options, but they're only structured to certain selections, right? They don't just go off into infinity. So they leverage Configurator very well to do stuff like that. Right. So that kind of rounds out. I mean, I could probably go on forever on talking on those two topics, but I did want to leave a little bit of Q&A time if anybody had particular questions, or maybe ways that, you know, current sales they've been working through, or anything in between related to product configurator and estimating. So I'll leave the sessions open here. If anybody has any particular questions, wants to put them in the chat or the Q&A, I'll be happy to respond to those. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to get their thoughts together. Hopefully I didn't explain it too well that nobody has any questions whatsoever. But if you do have any other questions, you know, after the meeting. Oh, okay, great question. So from Christy, what type of role typically manages the features and options? So that's a great question. So I usually view that who's managing the features and options are typically an engineering group, a very similar group to bill of material managers, somebody managing what structure is listed out there. I have had also sales manage that a little bit too, albeit I typically see more on the engineering side. But in the end, it is almost even a combination of the two, right? There is lots of pricing involved in that. There's lots of requirements for how sales might want to ask certain questions, but in the background, engineering is going to control how it's produced and making sure that you can do something that's valid. So that's why I usually find that it falls on the engineering group. Great question, great question. Any other questions? Again, you can always reach out to me at my email down below here, Hennelly@Blytheco.com. I will be at the conference this year, as far as I'm aware, unless something else drastic happens. So I'd be happy to meet anybody there and chat with anybody on this topic as you like. Yeah, I'll stay on for a few more minutes. And again, if anybody doesn't have any questions, feel free to drop off and get some more time back in your day.